How's it going, Exile? So a lot of you asked me how do I make currency, so here's the video on how I do this and how I juice my abyssal maps. So if you want to drop currency, like you can see in the background in the footage below, you can drop up to like 3, sometimes even more divines per map, and you just have a little investment for juicing the map. This is basically the guide to do it. So I have the trade links for all the tablets and the Waystones I buy in the description down below, so you want to make sure to check the sections of this guide for the full explanation on what maps I run and how I run them. And also, if you're interested in the build I'm running, you can also find a link to the build guide and the build guide video as well in the description down below. And as always, if you like the video, make sure to subscribe. I'm planning to do some more farming strategies this league, so I want to go back to the old school farming like Breach, Ritual, Delirium and stuff like that, so I want to see how they perform in the current environment. But this is basically the method I have been using to get like all my juicy gear. So yeah, I'm probably going to destroy my own farm by sharing this and the trade links, because you're probably going to buy the maps. Please keep in mind that the maps are probably going to get more expensive, so you want to make sure that you snipe those maps or craft them yourself. I will also make a video on how to craft those maps in the near future. But now, without further ado, let's start with the actual guide. And we're going to start with how do we find an area to juice and how do we juice the area. So now let's look at the area I'm running. So ideally you want to run corrupted areas. They just give you a little bit more juice. You can cleanse them. I'm honestly not sure what's better, cleansing or corrupting, because a lot of stuff gets overwritten by the abyssal pits anyway. I kind of have a feeling the cleansed gets overwritten more than the corruption, but you gotta figure that out by yourself. But basically you want to have a juiced area and your towers basically to have quantity with the tablets we already talked about. So, for example, I'm looking at this example area I'm going to run for this showcase here, and we have a good amount of 55% quantity maps here in the middle, right? These are all 55. There's not actually, but these are 55. There's another 55 here, and so we have a good amount of 55 maps here. Then this is also 55, and then we have the lower maps. Here's a 54, right? So these 36 you would run with like the second tier, like the 54% and whatever you would run with the first tier. And we even have some 66% maps here. There's 166, another 66, here's 154, I think there's another 66, 48. You can also run this as first tier. So yeah, and the good thing about this strategy, even though, you probably don't want to run this Sun Temple, but, this 66% increased Sun Temple is still nice, because with the overrun by the Abyssal, it's just going to place those 17 pits in the map regardless. So it doesn't really matter if the map is complete shit. You just gotta do it, and you will just clean the pits. So it's really, really not so important. Yes, you will lose on a little bit on the breach, but you know what? That's okay. And, based on the other mechanics, again, the rituals are all going to be wasted. They're going to be overwritten. And then we have Expedition. I feel like Expedition is decent because you just got to make one big bang. And since the maps have, 60% quant anyway, you're still going to get a decent chunk out of the Expeditions. And Breach, obviously, you can get. You want to have all your areas irradiated for +1 monster level. And bosses are obviously nice if you can squeeze in some extra boss tablets. But it's not a requirement. So for this showcase, we're basically going to run 10 juicy maps here. So we're probably going to take all the 55s, the 66, and maybe like 2 of these 48s here. I think we're going to do like 1 or 2 travel maps. I'm not going to count them. I'm still going to count them, but, if they drop anything decent, I will, probably discount it. I don't even know how I'm going to do it in the end. But yeah, basically what I'm doing is now we're going to, start a timer, and then we're going to run 10 of the most juicy maps. And after that, we're going to look at what the actual rewards are. Alright, so here's the maps we want to run. So I kind of buy 3 different kinds of maps, depending on, what increased quantity my map has. And, a little bit also I look on the budget. So basically what I do is when I'm on the PC, I have snipes on for these, and usually you can get these maps for cheap. If you're lazy, you can pay a little bit more. If you want to pay between 200 and 300 exalts per map, there's going to be enough supply. But if you're trying to get this a little cheaper, usually just using, a live search on the trade website works great. So this is the first category of maps we run. So basically every map we run here normally has abysses have X additional pits and areas overrun by the abyssal. So that mod basically just puts abyssal on the map, and this is very, very important for us. So this is the primary stat we look for, and we look for this with increased item rarity as much as possible. So this one, for example, is a 63 rarity and 45 rare monsters. So I usually put Distilled Paranoia on to just get the extra rare mobs. And then let's look at some other ones. So this one has 25 only, 83 rarity. This one has 45 rare monsters, 82 rarity, 107 rarity, 45 rare monsters, 82 rarity, 45 rare monsters, and so on and so on. So I'm gonna run a total of these 10 maps here. You can run tier 14 maps. It's not such a big deal. Obviously, tier 15s are better, but you can do a tier 14 if it's decent. So this is the first category of maps, right? So these we're going to run on any map above 50% quantity. Then if we have maps of lower quantity, for example, if we are like in the juiced area but we're passing, or we clean the juiced area and we go to the outside, so we only have like these 30, 20, well 20 I wouldn't run, but 30 and 40% quantity maps left. For this I would go like one tier lower. So we basically have one tier lower, and these are the maps which still have the overrun by the Abyssal, but they have rare monsters. So these are a lot cheaper. You can buy these in between 50 and 120 exalts, depending on the amount of rare monsters. And these we usually instill with greed to get at least some item rarity, right? So as you can see, these have, rare monsters 50%, rare monsters 82%, and so on. So this is like basically the second tier of maps. You can get one tier lower and just basically buy any map which just has overrun by the Abyssal and don't really look at the mods at all. You will get these fairly cheap for like 30, 40 exalts. You can definitely run these. But this is the second category, so we're going to run these on the outer maps, not on the very juiced maps, but on the maps which are juiced a little bit. And then there's one more thing we can do. If you're on a budget, you can buy these maps. So you can buy the maps which with abysses have 3 additional pits. So you can definitely run these on your maps. These are not as good as the overruns, but they kind of give you, a little bit, like, let's say 1/3 of the pits, but you can get them with much higher rarity values, right? So you can buy these with, I buy these with 60% plus rarity, for example, and as you can see, I don't have these instilled yet, so I could put more rarity by just, putting greed, for example, which is cheap. So these would all go to like 90% rarity, and you can run these on all the, 30% quantity maps. It's gonna make your abysses have, like 3 to it's probably going to be like 5 to 8 pits, which is, roughly half of what these maps will offer. So they're not going to be that juicy, but they're still going to be juicy. And these maps just cost like 5 to 10 exalts each, so these are fairly cheap. And obviously, I will have all the trade links in the description for you below. Also, like with the negatives, which I'm avoiding. And, I'm probably going to destroy my own strategy. But anyway, so I'm finishing up this anyway. So these are the 3 categories of maps to run. And then we just have tablets. Tablets really doesn't matter. You just want to have 6 and 7% quantity tablets. I usually play Breach, Irradiation, and Expedition and or Boss tablets. You don't want to run Ritual. First of all, Ritual tablets are expensive. And second of all, the Ritual gets overwritten by the Abyss. So there's really no sense running Ritual unless you're just running these maps here with the 3 additional pits. These can run Ritual, but these maps here cannot run Ritual. So even if there's Ritual on the map, it's just going to be removed by the Abyssal modifier here. All right, let's cash in. So the runs were not very good, to be honest. First of all, in 2 of my best maps, I died halfway through the maps. That's why I decided to add an 11th map towards the end, but this 11th map actually didn't drop anything, so I probably missed like a good amount of those 2 very juicy maps. Then on top of it, we didn't really drop any good abyssal stuff. Usually we get like at least 1 to 2 Omen of Light in a session like that. And, most of the time we get like a lot of Abyssal Echoes. I think we only got 2. So in terms of raw currency, this was actually not as great. However, I think we still made a decent profit. We dropped the Heart of the Well. I'm not going to count this into the profit. That would be like 12 divines. That would be like totally bloating. That's just a lucky drop. I'm not going to count that. I'm just going to count, the average, the raw currency we got. And I'm going to count the exceptional bases because these are liquid and, you usually get like a lot of these, so it's not uncommon to get the exceptional bases. So let's first now pull all the currency out of the stash.
A few moments later.
Alright, we cashed everything in. So, as you can see, we made a total of 27 divines in just raw currency. And on top of that, let's just calculate what else do I have here of value, which I want to include into the equation here. So we have 3 level 80 logbooks, that's 120 exalts. Then we have our uniques. I'm going to count uniques at like, 2.2 exalts. So if we just look at the uniques here, this is like what, like 10, 20, 30, let's say this is 40, let's say this is 50, let's say this is 60 uniques at 22 a pop, that is 2 a pop, so that's another 120. So let's add 1 more divine for the logbook and the uniques. And now let's check the exceptionals. So let's just make it like a, if we, do all the other stuff, we would, let's just say we would have like roughly 30 in raw divines. Let's just make it 30 so it's easier to, think about it. And now let's add the exceptionals, which, usually we would have other stuff, but I'm just going to look at the exceptionals here. So we have this first one, Val Gloves, at a value of 7 annuls. And we have like this one here at a value of 8 annuls. So let's just say, this is 15 annuls, so 1500. So let's just say it's like another 3 or 4 exalts. So this is probably worse than nothing here. So I would say we are like roughly made like 34 divines or something like that in those, let's just call it 10 maps plus 4 travel maps. Actually, the travel maps just dropped like 1 or 2 divines. So I would say we can say roughly 3 divines per hour, and this was not a very lucky session. Obviously, these farms are RNG based, so you're not always going to make the same amount. Also, it requires you to have a good amount of item rarity on your gear. For example, I have like 140% item rarity, which is not the highest you can get, but you want to have more than 100% item rarity to make this work. And, yes, it's RNG, but you're always going to get like other drops, which I didn't even, get into the equation, right? For example, if we look, I think I found like heavy belts. So we have like 3 normal heavy belts. That's like another 120. I didn't, count all the catalysts and stuff like that. So we have Riva Catalyst and whatever. So I didn't even like cash these in. So it's really just the raw currency we made, plus, the 2 exceptionals here, which add a little bit of profit. With these, we would probably be like somewhere in the, 33, 34, 35 divine range over the entire duration. And obviously we were lucky and dropped the Heart of the Well at 12 divines, but that, is just a random drop. But in past farms, I dropped like usually like 2, roughly, I would say 2 average Omen of Lights in this farm. This would be like another 6 diffs you could add, which I didn't drop like that in this farm. I died 2 times. So overall, I think this is a pretty solid method. Yes, there's an investment per map between, I would say 100 and 200 exalts. You can invest less for the maps. You can all run maps for like 15 exalts or 50 exalts, but they're not going to be as juicy. But, that always comes like expensive map farmings always come with a cost. Anyway, so I wanted to just showcase what I'm doing. Make sure to check the trade links in the description. So you can see what exactly maps I'm farming, and you can buy them yourself. I know I'm going to destroy my own farm, but it doesn't matter to me at this point because I'm going to move on to other stuff anyway. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you find this video useful, and thank you so much for watching, and I see you guys next time.